The Cat's Whiskers podcast is proudly sponsored by the Bunkers Hill Hockley. Don't miss Panthers game day offers, including Coors Light at £2.50 a pint. Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of the Ask TCW podcast. My name is John O'Bullard. As always, we've got an eclectic mix of hockey questions for us to discuss, and discussing them with me are Andy Haywood.
Good evening.
And Adam Reddish.
Hello everyone.
So like I say, 13 questions to get through, so thank you very much for sending them in throughout the day and throughout the week as well, as we've had a few in before today. And if you want to get in touch with us throughout the show, you can do via Twitter. Easiest way, it's at CatsWhiskersTV, and use the hashtag AskTCW. If you do get in contact with us, we will do our very best to read out your tweets. However, we've got a lot of questions to go through, so we will crack straight on. And this first one comes from Twitter. It's from Andrew Axon, at Rev Andrew Axon. So the good Reverend says, if we didn't win the league or any domestic silverware this season, would the run of CHL victories make this season a success? Andy, we'll start with you.
Wow. It depends how everything ends. I think if we get to one of the finals, whether that be the playoffs or the Challenge Cup, and if we compete in the league, then yes, I think that is a success. I think if we bomb out of the league, if we lose in the next round of the Challenge Cup and we don't make play a final weekend, then you would have to say that no, not really. As good as the CHL has been, and the CHL will be classed as a success no matter what happens. I just think that overall, on the whole, as a season, that what we've done in the CHL isn't sort of a be all and end all for this season. I think it's a fantastic opportunity now for us to knuckle down and let's see what we can do domestically.
Okay, Adam, same question.
I'd be disappointed, and I think the bar's been set so high now with the performances that we've seen in the CHL that I personally think it's unlikely that we will fizzle away and the rest of the season becomes disappointing and quite meaningless, because the quality of what we've done is there for all to see. And, for us to start not showing that quality in our domestic games, I think would be, quite a poor reflection on the players, if I'm being honest. We know that they've got the talent. We know that they've got the skill. So if they can do it against some of the biggest teams in Europe, they should be able to do it against the teams that we face week in, week out on the domestic front. So I think it would be a disappointing season if it did fizzle away, but I really don't think with this roster that we'll actually get to that eventuality. I think that we've got a very, very strong roster, probably the strongest roster we've had since the Grand Slam season. And, they are doing their talking on the ice at the moment, and it would be a real big change in fortunes, I think, if this team started to lose and lose regularly, and as Andy said, get knocked out of the Challenge Cup and make no inroads into the end of season playoffs. So I think it sort of would be a failure, but I can't see it getting to that, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I picked Panthers to win the league at the start of the season, and nothing I've seen has changed my mind on that. I think we are going to win the league, and we'll probably talk more about that as more of the questions are revealed as we go on. But yeah, I think the league is a possibility as long as we stay healthy. But more on that later. Second question. This comes from Henry Appleby. He sent this via Facebook, and it regards the Sheffield Steelers. He says, if the Steelers don't win the Continental Cup, do you think the Elite League will still get 2 places in the CHL? Andy.
I would have said no, but I'm not. I genuinely don't know now because of how ourselves and Cardiff have acquitted. Overall, as a league, we've acquitted ourselves very well. You look at you take us out of the equation, and I'd like to think that everyone would be talking about how well Cardiff did. And I must admit, if I was a Cardiff fan, I'd be a little bit annoyed about how well we've done, because it's kind of overshadowed, realistically, a fantastic CHL tournament for those guys.
Yeah, Well, I mean, I think we was talking about this in the pub last night, and it was saying like Cardiff. You've got to feel a bit sorry for them, because they've almost been what they've done, and they 2 fantastic results, 2 fantastic wins, one against Vaxshow Lakers, and it's almost been sort of forgotten in what we've managed to do, and you have got to feel a little bit sorry for them for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that should be shouted from the rooftops as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've beaten an SHL team, and all the results you could argue have been a shock, but you've only got to look at that Vaxshow Lakers result alone. What was the headline in the press back in Sweden? Was it like fiasco?
They were not happy.
No, it was fiasco. Club beaten by team from Wales or something like that, and it was like
and well beaten. It was 5-1.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's what Cardiff have done has been brilliant. And like I say, I genuinely feel sorry for them in the sense that we've overperformed and overachieved so much more that, like you say, they have, wrongly sort of been forgotten about. So it's an interesting question, because I think if both of us hadn't have got out, if we hadn't have got out the group stages as well, I say no. I think it's one team. But I think because of how well we've done as a collective, and I think because of the standards that the CHL has set already by accepting the Continental Cup winners into it, I think, yes, there probably will be 2 teams. I think the only way now that it doesn't become 2 teams is perhaps if Sheffield win the league and the Continental Cup, and they can sort of close that off there and just allow the 1 team. But I think any other sort of result, if Sheffield do win the Continental Cup, then yeah, I think we will see two Elite League teams in it again next year.
Adam?
Yeah, I think Andy's sort of made all the salient points there about whether we get 2 or 1 spots in the CHL next year. I mean, I personally think that the CHL organisers would have been very, very impressed with the way that both Panthers and Cardiff have approached the competition and the tournament this year.
And the attendances they've achieved.
And the attendances. Well. I mean, I was just about to go on and say that look at the way that the fans have responded and reacted to CHL games, both in this country at Nottingham and Cardiff, but the number of away fans that we've taken overseas into mainland Europe. The organisers can't have failed to have, seen how, much buzz there's been around the competition from the UK this year. So, and I think, not only have the organisers seen that, but probably fans of teams that we've come up against from, what you might call far more traditional hockey nations than the UK. I'm sure that the fans of other teams have probably thought, crikey, we didn't even think UK had any ice hockey, let alone these teams that are coming across to play us in our own arenas and, bringing 150, 200 fans. So I think that's what the CHL wants. You can't help but look around other games where there hasn't been any sort of UK participation. And the crowds for the group stages can be quite low. And, you look around the arenas and the rinks and they're fairly sparsely populated. But it's been the absolute opposite of that in the UK. We had a sellout last night. Cardiff sold their rink out, I think, for all of their home group fixtures. So that's what the CHL wants. They want to see big crowds watching, important games, and that's what they've got this season from Cardiff and Nottingham. So I think for that alone, we're probably going to be getting 2 spots next year, because the stock of UK ice hockey, certainly from what we've done on the ice, has improved immeasurably, and we've really hopefully got other European hockey nations to sit up and take notice of us, and maybe not treat us as the underdogs or write us off with as much ease as they might have done in previous seasons.
Yeah,
go on. I was going to say one thing just quickly I wanted to add about the crowds, particularly here in Nottingham, because obviously it's what I've seen, because it's the ones I've been to, is what a fantastic job Panthers themselves have done with the ticketing structures and the prices of them. I think it's no coincidence that we've had fantastic crowds, and we've had we had a sellout yesterday, and we had a decent crowd at all of our games in comparison to practically every other European team's games, obviously bar Cardiff. And I think the big key and the big reason for that is because it's been so well priced. The deals that they've given us and the prices that they've charged for fans has been absolutely fantastic. And I think the club realised as well how much of an impact it could make. I mean, yesterday, as a prime example, you think it's a knockout stage in the CHL. When I was talking to a friend at work who doesn't follow it, he asked the question if they bumped the ticket prices up because of what it is, and I said no, they've actually reduced it to what they normally are, to try and get people through the door, and that in its own right,
cheaper than that. I mean, my ticket, which if I was buying for a Challenge Cup game, I think would be £18, £17 with a discount. Last night was £12.
Yeah, so, and that is fantastic. And like I say, I could only applaud what Panthers have done there, because I think it's an absolutely brilliant initiative that they've shown, and I do think it's really helped getting people through the door.
Yeah, agree 100%. Just back to the question though, I don't think we will have 2 teams unless Sheffield win the Continental Cup. I think if Sheffield don't, I can't see us having 2 teams, and the reason being that there's founder members of the CHL, or founder countries, and they all get different, I think, 3 or 4 entries. I think Sweden have 4, Finland have 4, Germany have 4. So there's 12 teams just from 3 countries, and there's only 32 allowed.
Well, I mean, just putting in there for a second. Sorry, Jono, but what do France get? They get 2 entrants.
No, they get 1. They got 2. 1. They got 2 in last seasons because Rouen won the Continental Cup.
Right. Okay. Because I was just going to say that we ought to be benchmarked perhaps against the French teams, but you've got to look at a merit-based approach to this as well. And if your teams that are in the competition do well, and you might call us maybe the second tier European hockey countries, then hopefully that would leave some sort of impression with the organisers of the CHL to say, okay, UK ice hockey is doing well, and the teams that are involved in the competition have performed really well, probably exceeded their expectations, but as a reward for the 2 teams play during the games that they've played in, then they should get the 2 slots available for the following season.
I think the other thing as well is how the CHL rank our league, because obviously we saw that we were initially ranked 13th, and I think we'd made it up to now. We're 8th now, are we? I say. So I would imagine that with that in mind, that if they are looking at wild cards and other things like that we would be higher up the pecking order than perhaps some of the other countries. Possibly.
I guess we will find out in the close season next season, but I think it also makes an interesting point that the Sheffield Steelers are our big rivals, but for what it will do for the Elite League, if they manage to win the Continental Cup and get through, could be huge. And the Elite League stock has risen, as you have both said, especially in Europe, after ours and Cardiff's performances. So I think Sheffield winning the Continental Cup would be massive again. That gets them into the Champions Hockey League. The league winners into the Champions Hockey League. That's two teams back in, and I think if we've had two teams in two consecutive years, I think that could bode very, very well. But then the pressure's then on those teams to emulate what Panthers and Cardiff have managed to do this season, and that isn't always going to be easy, unfortunately. Okay, moving on to the next question. So the first few are going to be CHL themed. This one comes from Stratty1234 from the Cage Forum. He says, how confident are you that this year's team will avoid our traditional mid-season meltdown? As much as I love this year's roster and what they have accomplished so far, there's only ever been one Corey Nielsen team that have been able to maintain consistency for an entire season. Adam, you start us off.
That's a good question. I think from what I see when I watch Panthers play, the roster to me and the players look really purposeful and really committed to the cause this season. More so I think than for maybe the last few seasons, and that bodes well. I think that looking in from the outside and from the stands, there does seem to be great chemistry amongst the players, and there's a real desire to win for the fans and also the coaches. We saw last night with the respect from the players towards Corey Nielsen, which was a real nice touch. We just have to put our faith in the qualities of the players that we have, and they've shown through the CHL, as I said earlier, and they've shown in more domestic games in the Elite League than not, that they've got the ability to do really, really well and mount a really strong challenge for the league. The big question is obviously, I think, staying healthy, as you said earlier, Jono, and I think that might be touched upon in another question. But I see all those sort of key traits and those core characteristics from the players that will probably serve us really well as we go through the remainder of the season, because even if we sort of fall out of form a bit, I can still see, a player on the roster, Mokshantsev, pulling out a bit of magic, and ensuring that we might get a point or a couple of points out of a game where we played quite poorly or where our back's against the wall. So we just have different sorts of players for different eventualities and different scenarios. And I think that the mix of players on the roster means that we have got teams for every occasion, without wanting to sound a bit cliched. So I think over the course of the rest of the season, that eclectic range of talent and skill on the roster will serve us well and mean that Corey can go out there and try different systems and get the team to play particular ways against different opposition. So I'm for once not concerned about the normal Panthers mid-season malaise. I think that this year we'll probably be a lot more competitive through the middle stages of the season. And hopefully that gives us a really strong platform to mount an assault on the league, after Christmas.
Andy?
Well, what I will say is, and obviously Stratty doesn't specifically say what season, but I'm presuming that we're looking at...
I would think 12-13.
Yeah, when we won the league. That being said, I never really felt like we were in control until the end of January in that season. And obviously, the traditional Christmas spell wasn't great. We lost pretty convincingly in Sheffield on Boxing Day that season. So much so that I actually said I'm not spending any more money travelling away to watch that team, and then decided that I had to go to Belfast. And obviously, we had that absolutely horrendous 2-1 loss at home to Edinburgh, where we were, we were absolutely ridiculously bad that game. So it's one of it. I know exactly what he means, and there will be there will be bad performances. It's not having so many bad performances, and trying to sort of reduce them, and trying to ultimately, again, I don't want to quote Adam. I don't really want to come across as being full of cliches, but it's about if you lose one game, it's about making sure you don't lose the second. It's about coming back,
and that was something that 2012-13 team excelled in, because they, in the league, they never lost 2 games on the trot in that entire season, which
is a stunning statistic, really. And that ultimately is what we've got to do. And I think whichever team does that best will be the team that wins the league, basically. And I think that if we are to succeed this season, then we need to be a team that plays like that in that very same vein. It's got to be, I'm getting so close to nailing all the cliches here, but it's one game at a time. It's like I say, it is what it is ultimately, and I think realistically, we know we're not going to go through the rest of this season without losing. We will lose games for the rest of this season. That's a fact. But it's about minimising that and not giving the teams opportunities to create too much of a gap. And I think one of the things that has been mentioned already is the sort of the style of play and the style of players that we've signed don't look like the sort of players that are just going to think, oh well, we've lost this game. They look like the sort of players that are going to battle every shift, every period, and not give up. Trying to get wins, and that in its own right is a fantastic trait to have, because it's something that realistically you probably can't coach or teach. It's something that players naturally are sort of born with or have that desire, and I think it's something that realistically, unfortunately, the past couple of seasons, Corey's not really had those players that are willing to do that, and that's you could argue that's down to his recruitment choices, but you could also argue that there was a lot of players certainly in the past couple of seasons, or certainly since we won the league, that you could argue have let him down in that sense, because we've had quite a lot of players who, their CVs point to them being fantastic players and things like that, but they just for whatever reason, they seem to just sort of call it in when they get here, and I personally can't see where that type of player is going to come from in this squad, because like we've said, they all to a man look like they're willing to go to battle every game, and they're willing to fight for every single puck, in the hope of getting every single point. So long may it continue.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for your question.
Can I just add a point there as well? It sort of like follows on from what Andy was just talking about there. I think that our experiences in the CHL so far this season, that's bound to have created a really close-knit group of players. It to me feels like it's a bit of a siege mentality, because nobody fancied us to make any sort of inroads in the competition.
We've almost seed out of 32.
Yeah, no, it's almost like the guys have said, right, we're gonna prove the doubters wrong, and we're going to stick 2 fingers up at the pundits that are writing us off, and and those opposition teams and coaches that have said that we're only in to make the numbers up. So I think that that's created a really tight-knit group of players, and they must have spent a lot of time in each other's company as they've travelled around Europe to the different fixtures. So there, to me, seems a real strong sense of togetherness with this roster, and I think that we'll see that as we go through the coming months of the season, and hopefully, we might lose the odd game here or there, but the key thing is bounce back ability. Again, another cliche, and we will win significantly more games than we lose.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for your question, Stratty. We'll move on to the next one. This comes from Angus Wilson via Facebook, and you say something I picked up on in the last podcast was Zurich have the same core imports for a few seasons. Why do British teams not have this? I know we have our Brit pack, and they have played out of their skins so far. Massive improvements, especially in Farmer and Betteridge. So why don't we keep the same core of imports, Andy?
Well, I think we'll probably touch on some of this later on from one of the other questions. But I think ultimately it's about we are still a stepping stone league into Europe effectively. Yes, we are attracting better players. Yes, we are getting a better quality on the whole as a league. But currently, at the moment, realistically, we are still a stepping stone league in the sense that we attract players that are either coming towards an end of their career, perhaps, or on the flip side, you look at our roster this season with them being young, hungry, and wanting to make a name for themselves. And there'll be no, there's no shocks as to how well some of the players have performed, given their age and their standing and their career so far. And the fact that they're playing in a top prestigious competition in Europe, there's so many doors that would be open for some of these players. Hopefully, at the end of this season, rather than part way through, that having the ability to hold on to them is a lot more difficult than it would be for someone like Zurich.
Yeah.
Because they have the big money, they have a real top professional league. That pumps money into it, and they can afford to get two players straight from the NHL. And it's one of those things. I think there's so many different reasons as to why we don't necessarily attract players on multiple years and sort of having them for more than just a couple of years, that you'll get the odd player that's on a uni deal. But I think on the whole we're getting better, but I think we're still a little way off, and in some other countries we're probably a long way off.
Okay. Adam, anything to add to that?
I think Andy's made some really, really good points there about why there's quite a high level of turnover in imports in the UK. I think maybe something else to throw into the mix is maybe the imports get frustrated that applying the trade over here. They see things like officiating, which isn't everyone's cup of tea, and they feel that if their talents allow them to, they can go on and move off to another league where maybe the standard and the quality of officiating is a bit better and a bit more professional. That's not sort of saying anything derogatory about the standard of officiating in this country. It's just that obviously I think a lot of the refs, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but most of the refs are part-time. They probably have other jobs. I suspect that, in the professional leagues in Germany, Switzerland, Finland, Sweden, they've got full-time officials. So, as a result of that, the games are better handled and better officiated. So I think, Andy has hit the nail on the head there with all the reasons as to why, imports are attracted to places like Zurich and want to stay around for a while. And who wouldn't when, you're earning that sort of money every year. But I suppose there are a myriad of factors that contribute to the number of imports that come to this country. Play for a season or two and then think, well, we've done the UK. Let's move on someplace else because another league, another team can pay me significantly more than what I'm earning here at this team.
I agree. I think the Elite League still offers itself, I think, as a shop window.
Yeah.
And certainly, I do worry about the end of this season for this Panthers team because they've applied themselves so well and have got to be known Europe-wide that...
Oh, yeah, we'll be a victim of our own success.
Yeah, I think we could be... picked dry a bit over the summer. I really, really hope not, but the success we've had has made these bigger teams in Europe sit up and take notice, and they'll probably be coming for some of our players, unfortunately. But I suppose we shall see in the close season. So thanks very much, Angus, for your question. Next one comes from Richard Davis at rdavis1988 on Twitter. He says, how much energy do you think the monumental run in the CHL will take out of us during the latter stages of the season? Adam, you go first.
Well, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I think that fitness and conditioning is something that we as a club are probably in a better position this season than we have been in previous seasons.
Totally agree.
With people in place to oversee that, and it's their sort of one and only role to make sure that the players stay healthy, stay well conditioned, and look after themselves between games so that they can stay fit and their bodies hold up for longer throughout the season. So it could take its toll. The guys have played more than the guys that are at other clubs in the Elite League that aren't involved or haven't been involved with the CHL. We just need to make sure that those players get the best possible fitness and conditioning that we can give them. And as well, maybe the club, maybe the owner, Neil Black, if he sees that there's a league title to be won and we're still challenging, with 2 or 3 months of the season to go and we're right in the hunt. We could look at maybe bolstering the roster, to maybe carry an extra import or two, without wanting to upset the dynamic of the roster. Maybe the fact that we could bring in an extra player or two, can keep the guys fresh, means that someone gets a rest every week, and it means that whenever they're called upon, they'll want to do their best because they don't want to be the player that sits the following week. So I think there's a couple of factors there. Fitness and conditioning is definitely something that the club have seemingly got a lot better at, and they've recognised that there was an issue there potentially, and have addressed that in the close season. And secondly, it's up to the coach and maybe the owner to look at what the side needs and make those additions and bring in supplementary support if they feel that that would be beneficial to us mounting a really serious league challenge.
Any points to add, Andy?
Could I have the question again, please?
Yeah, how much energy do you think the monumental run in the CHL will take out of us during the latter stages of the season?
Yeah, it's one of the things. I'm actually slightly worried about how we're going to be in our next bunch of games, because we have quite a significant rest between a lot of our games coming up now. I think we play one on Saturday, then we play on Wednesday, and then am I right in thinking that we've only got one the weekend after as well?
I think that is the case. You keep talking, I shall have a quick look.
And obviously, it's quite a, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the players will be happy and they will certainly relish the chance to have, some days off and some rest and stuff. But we will undoubtedly lose some momentum and some impetus because we're not playing as regular.
Right, yeah, we don't have a 2-game weekend now until the 25th and 26th of November.
Yeah, but that being said, obviously there was. Apologies if I've got the wrong one, but I think it was. I'm going to say Freddie, but it might have been Jamie now. One of the black children.
So about 30 games so far. It was
played
Freddie.
Freddie, yeah. We've played 30 games already, and it's November. You look at some of the teams in the league; they've played less than half of that. Admittedly, that includes exhibition games, so probably teams have probably played half of that if you include their exhibition games. But obviously, we've played a hell of a lot more hockey than a lot of the other teams, and I'm sure it will take some toll out of the players. They will be tired, and come the end of the season, they would have played an awful lot of games. But I do think that they're conditioned well. They certainly look fit. There have been times recently, and I'm thinking about probably the Guildford game, particularly on Friday, where we looked very tired during the game. But then I thought the next night we looked very good. And obviously last night, we battled for the full 60 minutes. So it's one of the things I think we just got to manage how we sort of go on for the rest of the season now. I think obviously there's, like Adam says, it will be nice to it will be nice to be able to eventually say, do you know what, should we bring in another player? That might be quite nice. But I do also think that there's they're quite a professional outfit this year, which is exciting to watch. And I think, yes, we will probably not necessarily tire as such, but I think we will certainly see some effects, but I don't think they will be too drastic in the whole.
One thing to say though is that whilst players might feel tired and fatigued as a season continues and gets towards its conclusion, if we're well in the hunt for a title and we're winning pretty much every game by that stage, a lot of players will probably look past the fact that they're tired and fatigued and think, right, we've got a job to do here. We've got to win this next game. We've got to win the next 2 games over next weekend. And, you can certainly look past that sort of tiredness and fatigue if you're on a great run of form, because you just want to get out there and play the next game. Because winning, sort of breeds success and, gets the players energised. So, even at the end of a long season, if they know that, they only need a handful more wins to, get themselves over the line and win a league, they will give everything, even though the tank is, quite bare by that point.
I've got to admit I'm not worried after the way they applied themselves this weekend against Guildford and Milton Keynes, when quite obviously tired, especially against Guildford, and at points during the Milton Keynes game, probably from the halfway point, we looked very tired, but still managed to pull out 2 wins and a 4-point weekend. So I've got to admit, I think there's a lot of character and a lot of grit in this team, and that will take us through. And I think having these probably a sparsity of games over the next couple of weeks will probably help them, and probably help them rest and recuperate a little bit, ready for the next raft of games as we head towards Christmas. But thanks very much for your question, Richard. Next one comes from Gareth on Twitter @Fogey. He says, not sure you'll like this question, but I'd like to hear your answers. Is it only downhill from here? I don't mean to be pessimistic, but how on earth do we follow that? Go on, Adam, you go.
Is it all downhill from here? No, it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. The players hopefully now have recognised that they've had a wonderful run in the CHL, but that's done. That's in the past. It's in the history books as well because of how well we've done. But they need to now focus, and obviously, the coaching staff will have a major role to play in this, but they need to focus now on the bread and butter, the domestic campaign. And as I said at the start of the show, it's up to the players, really. I mean, we know the players have got it in them. They've got the skill, they've got the quality, they've got the grit and determination. And, if they apply themselves and if they're, coached right and, we sort of get the right strategies and approaches against different teams in the league, then I think we should be okay. It is sad from a fan's perspective that the CHL run is over. We've all had an amazing time, and we've seen some games that we never thought we'd ever see, as Panthers fans. But we just have to put that in the past now and say, okay, as great as that was, there's now something else that we've got to focus on. And to be fair, the players and the coaching staff have, because we've done really well so far in the league. The fact that we're top of the league shows that we haven't been taking our eye off the ball when we've been coming back from the CHL games, and not performing or acquitting ourselves well. In some of what you might call the lesser glamorous games against teams in the elite league. So I think that we are well sort of set and well placed to carry on and keep up the form that we've been showing on the domestic front. So I don't think it is all downhill from here, because the fans know now that the players are talented, and that they've got great performances within them. And we just want to see more of those, and we want to see it consistently between now and the end of the season.
Anything to add, Andy?
No, I think that's pretty much summed up. No, I think we might, as fans, we might not witness a game, with so much energy and so much passion from the stands. But I don't think it necessarily means that it's downhill from here.
Okay, thanks for your question, Gareth. I hope that's answered it for you, and it sounds like we're probably not meaning to be as pessimistic as what probably you are, but I hope that changes as the season goes on for you. Next question comes from Nicky Honorati. He is, of course, the manager of the Bunkers Hill Inn in Hockley, who are very generous sponsors of this podcast. He says, I had a brief chat with a group of people that were covering the game from the BBC. They all said how much they enjoyed the game and the passion from the fans from all over the elite. They went on to say that they know there is an audience in waiting and would love to show more of our beloved sport. So my question is, what kind of format do you think would work best for a regular televised UK hockey show? Weekly match of the day style show, fortnightly live games, or a red button system where a choice of games will be available with archive games too? Andy?
Anything, I think, ultimately at this stage. I think what would work best would be, well, what I would like best would be like a weekly highlight show, or like a roundup show, that type of thing. But having said that, I'm not convinced that will work best. I think ultimately live hockey will work best for this league that we have now. Like I say, I would like a highlight show. I'd be I'm interested in seeing how other teams do, but true to today's day and age, I'm incredibly lazy in that I don't want to have to search around YouTube to watch it all. I want to have it all in one place and not have to worry about where I'm going to find it. So that would be perfect for me, but I don't think it would work necessarily for the league. I think that people will want live games, and that certainly would be a very big pull as well. So yeah, I think a live game. Let's be greedy. If we're talking about what would we want or what would work best, a live game every week. I'm not crazy enough to think that it will be Saturday night at 7 o'clock on BBC One. But we might be able to get like the red button service or on the BBC Sport app. We might be able to get a live game on there perhaps once a week. So that in its right, would probably be my ideal sort of semi-plausible sort of option.
Okay. Adam?
I think they're all very valid points that Andy's just made there. I mean, my sort of take on that question is that I think if we want to try and get more people into ice hockey that aren't really, familiar with it or don't know its, ins and outs, the first step for me would be, get them to see some brief highlights. Will somebody that's new to the sport and doesn't know the rules or anything to do with the game, have the appetite to sit down and watch, a 2.5 hour product? I don't think they will. I think in most cases people just want to see quick highlights, all the key moments and big action points from a game, and then they might progress to say, well, okay, I've watched this highlight show. I've if I live in, I don't know, I'm just picking a town at random here. If I live in Guildford, but I wasn't really aware of what the Guildford Flames were and who they are, I might actually go and make the effort to go and watch a live game down at the Spectrum. So I think that's probably part of the plan, as I see it, would be to maybe focus more on the shorter and snappier programs at the outset, and then once you've grown the sport to the next level and the next stage, and that's where perhaps the live games come into it, because you've got a bigger audience and a bigger pool of people and fans that are going to be more receptive to sitting down and taking 2.5 hours out to watch a live game. But I think we do need more coverage in general. I agree with what Andy said right at the start of his answer, is that anything we can get is a bonus. But I think just being logical about it, we have to take small steps first, rather than just thinking that we're going to end up with a prime time hockey game that's going out at 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening on BBC One, because I think fans of Strictly Come Dancing might feel a bit aggrieved at seeing their show sort of knocked out the schedules by this strange sport with people that carry sticks and punch each other occasionally.
Better than ballroom dancing, though.
Well, agreed 1,000,000%. Maybe it's an idea for Strictly Ballroom.
I think for me, I would like to see a match of the day style program, rounding everything up with probably some extended highlights from a couple of games, probably one from each night, goals from the rest, and a bit of analysis. I think that would be really good to get people interested in the sport, and then you probably grow it from there, and then look at live games. You cover the things like the playoff final, the Challenge Cup final live, because they're obviously special games, and then the CHL games, they've been all covered live as well. But I think for now, if we're looking to attract more people who probably don't know about the sport, I think that is the ideal format at this point for that. So that is what I would like to see. Ant has been in touch. Unfortunately, can't be on tonight because he's lost his voice. He says live game every Friday night with a highlight show on Monday evening. So they are Ant's thoughts. What do you think? Get in touch with us at Cats Whiskers TV. We will try and get through as many of your tweets as we can throughout the rest of the show. But we will move on because we've got 6 questions still to get through, and we're 3/4 of an hour in. So this comes from David Moy on Facebook. He says, congratulations from a Storm fan on your wonderful CHL campaign. You've done the Elite League proud. However, please could the panel each set out their top 3 points that will, in their opinion, enable the quality of ice hockey in this country to begin to match the levels of teams like Zurich. Andy, you start us off.
Well, I think my first one is major sponsorship for everybody. That's the league, that's all the clubs, because ultimately it brings in revenue. If you can get major sponsors involved, with a title sponsor for the Elite League, big name sponsors for all the clubs, it means that they can they get more revenue, so they can attract better players potentially. But it also means that we don't ever have this issue that we have, most seasons, where you hear rumours of, Team X is struggling this year, and Team Y has been bailed out this season again, and stuff like that. And it just cuts all that sort of stuff out. I don't think for 1 second that just having a shed load of cash is going to overturn the league overnight. But I just think that ultimately what sets us out against other countries, as explained earlier on, is that ultimately there's an awful lot more money going in a lot of the other places, because it's not such a minority sport. I think professionalism, I think that plays a key part, and it's sort of on and off the ice. It's the general sort of, it's treating your players right. It's being able to train 4 times a week rather than once a week, or get decent enough ice time that you're not having to train in the early hours of the morning, things like that, because ultimately you can't really account for having to train at 11 o'clock at night as a professional sport. It's not, I don't think it's sustainable. So I think things like that, just sort of general professionalism, across the board as well. That is, it's not just certain clubs. It's not just about the clubs as well. It's about the league. I think having a professional league is key as well. And my final thing is it's sort of the format of it, and it's not necessarily all of these points, but some of these points potentially could make it slightly more exciting. You could have more teams, perhaps, if politics and other aspects, money and things like that fall into place. You could add more teams and make it more exciting. So you've reducing the number of times you're playing each other. You could look at the format of the league and the cups themselves. Either shorten the cup or make the cup like the Autumn Cup was and just play it early and get out of the way. Promotion and relegation. If you had a lot of teams extending the playoff series, it always gets talked about, but unfortunately never will happen. I just think a better format than what we've got now, which is difficult because at the end of the day, it's not a bad format. We have a cup competition, we have a league season, and we have the playoffs as well. And obviously Europe, if you're lucky enough to be involved. So we don't have a bad format, but I just think tweaking it here and there, perhaps, and like I say, slightly more professional from all outfits, including the league, and a lot more cash and exposure.
Adam, your three?
Yeah, I think Andy's probably touched upon some of the points I was going to make from my three choices, but I think the first one that I'd make is there has to be more investment in youth hockey. There really does, because
that would be one of mine as well.
Yeah, I think that this season, I sort of look around the different teams in the league, and I just don't see a hell of a lot of youth talent. And the young guys that are on different benches from different teams just aren't getting the ice time. And I think there's a question later on about that in relation to a certain team.
So
it's the next one.
It'll go fitting quite nicely.
It's a nice sort of segue into it. But definitely investment in youth hockey. We need to grow the pool of better qualified and better talent of young GB players, and obviously that'll be to the betterment of the GB national programme eventually, when they get a bit older, because I think, as you said, Jono, you've seen quite a lot of junior hockey tournaments in the last year or so, and the quality's there, but it's the pathway through, and that means that you've got to look at the structure of the leagues and maybe how the teams themselves are mandated to try and bring through some of this quality into their rosters, and then not just have them there as window dressing, to actually make sure that they're an integral part of what that team does, and log good ice time. So the second thing for me would be, and Andy mentioned it right at the end of his contribution, promotion relegation. I just think that I see Edinburgh every season, or virtually every season, down at the bottom, and I just think, where's the incentive for them to actually get better? If they know it's a closed shop and that they're not in any imminent danger of dropping down into a low division, they're probably quite comfortable doing what they're doing. And I'm not just picking Edinburgh out, but I'm sort of like saying that there should be a penalty for poor performance in the league. I know we don't have an abundance of teams, and I know that the gap between the professionalism of the elite league and the league below is now probably as big as it's ever been, which is regrettable. But maybe the administrators of the sport in this country need to look at how we can better align and close that gap between the top and the second division, because at the moment it's too big. It's too big from going from to import hockey to what we have in the elite league. Yeah, I just can't see how that helps anybody, and it certainly won't help bring through a good crop of young great British players. So that's something for the administrators of the game in this country to wrestle with. And I think the third one is just greater exposure in the media generally. We need to increase the profile of ice hockey in the UK, because, as Andy rightly pointed out, that increases the revenue that's available to each team, and then in turn each team can go out there and look at maybe bringing in better quality players, or using that money to reinvest in youth hockey, in their areas. So they're my three things that I would like to see tackled by those that run the sport in this country.
Yeah, Mine would be. I mean, you touched youth hockey. Investment in youth hockey is one. Another one of mine would also be independent governance, because I don't think the owners running the league at a boardroom level and making decisions is working. And I think it leads to unprofessionalism. It leads to questions being asked about conflicts of interest, and I just think it needs some independent governance. And then also, I think I'd like to see professional teams, elite league teams, working with teams in the lower level in the NIHL and bringing players through, or actually bringing out the under-20 league that they talked of.
Yeah.
That sort of got done half-heartedly. Because, like you say, we need to bring youth talent through, but it needs to be at a challenging level. And I would like to see an under-20 league formed where each team is linked to an elite league club, and it provides a more depth for each team. So I think they are the changes I would like to see, and I think would help us get towards the likes of the Zurich Lions, personally. But thanks for your question, David. And it sort of leads into this next question. It comes from Nick Keith on Twitter at Nikolavich. I hope I've said that right. And he says, long-time listener, first question: with Guildford releasing their under-23s and ours not even icing, is the new rule working? Andy?
It's probably not working like I thought it was going to, I must admit. But that being said, from the interview that we got with Tetlow and Kelsall at the games night a couple of months ago, they are enjoying the opportunity of training with the Panthers and learning so much from these high quality players that you're not going to get that kind of quantity in the NIHL. So I completely understand what he's getting at in his question, in the sense that these are guys that are ended up sitting on the bench for 58 minutes of the game before they come on and have two shifts, and then that's it, they're done. And it does kind of seem sometimes like it can be pointless. I think last night, I don't have an issue with that at all last night, in the sense that for the best part of 50 minutes, 45 minutes, there was always that glimmer of hope before it pulled away, and I think ultimately when Zurich pulled away, there was also that danger of the game boiling over a little bit at one point. So I think when they came on, it was sort of the right time, as it were, because it was sort of safe to do so, and the tie was gone. So I kind of get that, but I think certainly in some of the league games and the Challenge Cup games, perhaps you can make the argument that they should be getting slightly more regular shifts. Maybe not a regular shift, but certainly more shifts than they have been getting. But then they're getting plenty of ice time down at the NIHL level, in their sort of their own domestic campaigns. But it's just that they're obviously getting that opportunity, like I say, to train with elite league teams. So I think ultimately my first statement is sort of the best way I could sum it up, is that I think it does work, but I don't think it's working anywhere near like what we perhaps expected it was going to at the start of the season, because I certainly expected that, although they were on two-way contracts, I expected that if they were going to be here with us, that they would be icing more regularly, certainly with the talent of player that we've managed to pick up in this regard, because from what we've seen of both Kelsall and Tetlow, and to be fair, Hazeltine as well, when he's been here, They look like they could be really good additions coming through in the future. So it would be nice to see them ice a little bit more, perhaps. But as gets discussed quite a lot, depending on who you talk to, it's not a development league. It's a professional league. So it is difficult. But I just think that ultimately it's perhaps not quite what I expected. But I don't necessarily think that it's been a failure, because it is an opportunity that these kids, wouldn't necessarily have got if it wasn't for the rule that's come in place.
Anything to add, Adam?
Well, I know it's a rule, and it was introduced at the start of the season, but you've got to look at the enforcement of it, haven't you? If teams aren't playing by the rules, what's the point in having the rule? I mean, you either have it and enforce it, and by that I mean, I know it's quite draconian, but points deductions, penalty, fines, because it just sort of undermines that part of the rule book. If teams aren't buying into the spirit of it, and I think Guildford were mentioned, weren't they, that they got rid of their under-23 players, then that sort of comes back to what we were saying in the last question about, where is the next crop of young talent coming from? Guildford might think, well, what's the point? Because our young players that maybe in the system down there at Guildford just aren't ready to make that jump yet and make that leap between junior hockey and senior elite league hockey that's professional. So it's difficult. I absolutely agree with Andy though, in the sense that it doesn't seem to have worked in the spirit that it was intended, but it's probably a little bit too early to judge, because we've obviously got Kelsall and Tetlow. Obviously we have to put our trust in Corey to find the right sort of game situations to give them more ice and to give them the experience that they need during game situations. But having them with us and having them train with good, skilled and excellent imports day in, day out is probably going to be helping their development. And whilst we won't see that because they don't get the number of shifts that some people might think they deserve during games, they are learning about professional ice hockey. They are around professional ice hockey players, getting into professional ice hockey traits, and having that sort of mindset and mentality of a professional ice hockey player. So, I think as the season goes on, we probably will see more of our junior under 23s. And hopefully they'll get more confident. They'll not let anyone down. As the shift that Tetlow showed last night, he didn't let anyone down. It was a good shift. He did everything right. And next season they'll probably be integrated more within the roster if they're both still attached to Nottingham. And I think they will be, because it seems like they are a long-term project, and we want them to be our next Brit Pack. And maybe other clubs are doing that. That they have their under 23 players with them on the roster. I know Sheffield are bringing through Kirk and Chudra, aren't they? And they're getting decent ice time in certain games. And this is what we want to see. We want to see young Brits, making their way in the sport at the highest level, because the only winner of that will be British ice hockey.
Absolutely. Thanks for your question, Nick. We're moving on to our next one. Comes from a well-known Cage forumite, Ginla. He says, why is our power play so consistently poor? Yes, Zurich are a great team, but last night highlighted the massive gulf in quality in that aspect of the game. Zurich entered our zone with complete ease and stayed there, yet we could hardly even gain entry to their zone, never mind getting set up properly. It was purely a player quality thing. In the EIHL we should be doing to lesser teams what Zurich did to us, but we don't do that, and our power play domestically is still poor. Andy, you did some figures earlier on the power play.
I had a quick look, because basically it was one of the things where we have picked up recently, and I didn't know sort of.
I have done the last 4 league games. We've had 10 power play opportunities and scored 5 goals for 50% in the last 4 league games.
Now, obviously, in the Challenge Cup, we haven't scored a power play goal. we've had 10 power plays and haven't scored any, which isn't great. But we also do have 2 games remaining. In the league, we've got 11 power play goals from 52 power plays, which 11 power play goals is 6th in the league, and 52 power plays is 9th in the league. So we've not had a great deal of power plays in that sort of instance. But our percentage is 21.15, which is 7th in the league, which isn't great by the fact that we're 7th in the league. But I don't know if it's greed or not, because you want to be first in the league. But I always was sort of led to believe that sort of anywhere around 20% is not bad. Ultimately, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's very good, but it's certainly an acceptable percentage. I do think that, like I said in a previous podcast, that sort of as the season goes on, I expect it to get better. And it's certainly, in recent form, I think it's fair to say that it has done. The difference with the Zurich one is their whole demeanour and their whole gameplay was just a joy to watch. All the passing was crisp and tape to tape, and they very rarely had to were sort of pulled out of position by their own admission. And I'm just trying to find the stats now. They had 1 power play goal yesterday, and that was on the 5-on-3. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So they had 7 power plays and scored 1, which was 14%.
And we killed
and bear
the 5
in mind
minute one as well.
That includes a 5-minute power play and over a minute and a half of 5-on-3. So yes, it might look good because they pen us in the zone, but ultimately, it's effectiveness isn't great in that sense. Realistically, because 14% isn't a fantastic figure, and certainly 1 from 7 isn't something that they'd be particularly happy with, considering the amount of time they had on the ice on that man advantage. But it's one of those things. There's a lot of circumstance that comes into it. I was completely agree with Ginland that our problem is when we're set up in the zone, at times we look quite threatening, but as soon as the puck is cleared, we really struggle to get it back in there and settle back into sort of positions and into routine again. We really struggle with that transition of getting the puck back from around Michael Garnett or Patrick Galbraith and getting it settled back in the opposition zone. That's where we really seem to struggle. I think when we win the face-off on the initial power play and we cycle the puck around, we look an awful lot better. But like I say, as soon as it's cleared, that's when all hell seems to break loose, and we just really struggle getting it back over the blue line and set up. And I think that is where the difference is, because, like I say, if you can spend 2 minutes and get 5 shots off on that power play, even when you don't score, you feel like you've had a good power play. But because we're spending a minute and 40 of the power play trying to get the bloody thing back in the zone, that's the frustrating thing, because you might have that, and then you might score in the final 20 seconds when it finally comes round. But when you think back overall, you think back about how poor the power play's been because you've spent so long trying to get it set up. You sort of forget almost about the power play goals that have scored, because the majority of the time on the man advantage you've really struggled. And I think it's the transition play really that's sort of holding us back a little bit now. I expect that the teams at the top, I think Sheffield are currently on about 30%.
They are, yeah.
I expect that will come down as the season goes on, and I expect that ours will probably go up as the season goes on and sort of level out. I'd certainly like to think around sort of 25%, which I'd class as a good power play. If you're getting 4 power plays a game and you're going to come away with 1 power play goal, then I consider that quite good. And realistically, you're probably going to win more games than you lose.
Yeah, and another thing to point out: Sheffield's power play might be 30%, but they're fourth in the league. We're top.
Yeah.
So, what's the more important statistic? At the end of the day, we're top of the league. I don't see much to complain about. Yeah, power play's not great. I completely agree. But 50% in the last 4 league games, that's pretty good. And as the saying goes, you're only as good as your last game. So, yeah. Adam, anything to add on that?
Not really. I think Andy's nailed it there with his sort of explanation of why things are the way they are. All I'd say is, with reference to last night's game, that Zurich didn't have too bad a penalty kill, did they? It's not like we're got power play opportunities against Edinburghs and the Dundees of this world. That they're a much tougher nut to crack. So, given that we have had issues with our power play, over the course of the season to date, although things have, as you said, got better in the last few weeks, it was never going to be a given that our power play units were going to, start expressing themselves and moving that puck around quicker and creating copious opportunities to get the puck on the Zurich netminder last night. That's just never going to happen. So I think we, instead of criticising and lamenting the quality of our power play units last night, I think we probably have to give a bit of credit to the Zurich penalty killers.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for your question, Aginla. This next question comes from Graham Thompson, most people know as @Clantastic on Twitter, and of course one of the members of the Purple Army podcast that covers the Brayhead clan. He says, will 280 characters enhance, diminish or make no difference to official and unofficial EIHL social media? And it is now taking longer to read out some questions, a necessary evil or no big deal, or just adding to the preparation necessary for a podcast. Example, editing questions. I will say, from my point of view, it doesn't make much of a difference to us because we accept questions from the cage, from Facebook, where you can have as many characters as you want, and an email as well as Twitter. So from that point, it makes very little difference. From my own point of view, for advertising things like a podcast and also putting in the detail of what is in the podcast is better. I actually like the fact it's gone to 280 characters. I think that's it now. Don't increase it anymore. But I think 280 characters is great. And even so, that's still only probably a couple of decent sentences. And I actually like it. But what do you guys say, Andy?
Well, I read that tweet actually earlier on today, and I must admit I thought the vast majority of it was probably tongue in cheek, particularly the bit about having so many characters. Does it just for podcasts? Does it mean editing the questions down? I presumed that he was almost implying that you should edit this question out. I thought I got the impression that bit was tongue in cheek. Ultimately, I couldn't care less how many characters it is, to be really honest. It makes no odds at all. I've seen a lot of people moaning and sort of the general outcry of it. This isn't in the hockey world; it's just in general, and I just don't. I've got far more important things to worry about than Twitter adding the capability to add another tweet to your tweet. One thing I will say though is there's been certain times when I've tweeted, particularly whilst doing MP Hockey Live, where you run out of characters and you have to completely rethink about what you were going to say. So it will be nice in that sense that you can perhaps give a little more detail to the action. So hopefully that might be a little bit better for the people that are following it on Twitter that perhaps can't get to games. So that'll be quite nice in that sense. But on the whole, I couldn't care less.
Adam, could you care less?
Well, I think I'll probably fall into that category that Andy's just mentioned. But I mean, those that know me probably think that the extension to the character limit on Twitter is good for me because I generally use 10 words where one would suffice anyway. So and it's the same on social media. So it's more room to elaborate on thoughts about. So, but no real strong opinion on it either way, to be honest. But to those that want to use those extra characters, you are more than welcome to use it. Or if you're a bit of a a traditionalist. There's nothing forcing you to go higher than 140 characters.
Exactly. Just like you, 14 imports is just a limit.
Absolutely.
Okay, just 2 more questions to go, and we've been going a while, but I think we've had. Well, I think the 3 of us had some cracking discussion tonight. I mean,
absolutely, really enjoyed it.
Don't know what you guys think who are listening to it. You're probably bored stiff out there, but we've had a good time anyway. But just 2 more questions to go. This next one comes from Gemma Swinsko, and she says, "Over the years of going to a number of arenas, ice rinks, I have my favourites. What are the TCW members' favourite ones and why?" And she actually has a caveat that it can't be because of the nice fans. So, Andy, you go. Your favourite rink or arena?
That I've been to with Panthers, probably probably Rouen, because it was just a very good weekend. I was at an age where I was it was my first sort of trip, sort of alone, without my parents. That my parents went, but I went with friends rather than with my parents. So probably Rouen in that sense. Locally, sort of domestically, Fife, I think, because it's incredible. It really is an incredible atmosphere, and I can appreciate that some people might not like it because it can get pretty hostile at times. But they are so passionate about that club and about their team that it makes for an absolutely fantastic atmosphere, and it's usually a very good game as well. So I think domestically, Fife. I think sort of Panthers on tour, Rouen, but generally nothing will beat Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I knew you was going to come out with that. Adam, yours?
I absolutely have to agree with Andy. Domestically, it has to be Fife. It's the closest thing to our old ice rink, isn't it? With the passion, the atmosphere, the noise, the proximity and closeness from the fans to the ice, and the team benches and penalty boxes, etc. I've been to Fife 2 or 3 times, and I sort of get that nostalgic feel that I'm back in the old barn, and the noise and everything about it. It's a proper place to go and watch hockey. As Andy said, it can be hostile, but that's great. I like that because it shows that the fans really care, and they're really behind their players, and they'll give them that extra sort of advantage on the ice to try and get that win. I think, thinking abroad, I mean, I've been to a fair few ice rinks and arenas overseas, but I liked Amiens in France because we went back in 2003, didn't we, Jono, to that?
Yeah, 2004. I think
was it 2004?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
It's that long ago. I've lost a year.
Yeah.
But it was a tournament where Curtis Cruikshank pulled off possibly one of the best saves I've ever seen.
I thought it was 03. It was the 03-04 season, wasn't it?
I
think the Oracle's got one wrong.
Oh.
No, was it?
It's getting late, that's why.
No, I thought it was Craig Ed's second season, which would have been 2004-05.
No, it was his first.
Was it?
His second season, he left halfway through and went to Cardiff.
I think Andy's right.
Right.
But anyway, I mean,
carry on talking. I'm going to get on the internet.
You've been banished.
I'm chalking that one up as a win, by the way.
Yes,
It's
that's
not very
a clear
often we
win.
get one ever, Jono.
It's a TKO. It's a TKO. But yeah, it was such a loud place, and hostile place. I mean,
a beer pit, I think.
When it was a beer pit. When Amiens were playing, I mean, the noise there, it was something else. It was deafening. You almost needed ear defenders. It was that loud. Which made it quite sweet that we beat them on their own ice. But yeah, I think they're my 2 picks. So Fife at home and Amiens on the continent.
Okay. Mine would be Fife for the reasons that you picked. It's very, very hostile. But if I was going to pick one, it would be one that is long gone. It is our old rink. which was knocked down 17 years ago, believe it or not. Wow. But for anyone who never got to see a game there, imagine the atmosphere as it was last night, which was phenomenal. Crank that up 10 times and you had the atmosphere that you got regularly at our old barn on Lower Parliament Street. It was a very, very special place to watch ice hockey, and to this day I miss it dearly. The arena's great, it's comfortable, it's warm, you've got lots of leg room, and it's a lovely place to watch hockey, but for the actual feeling of intimidation, the noise, the atmosphere, nothing for me will ever beat the Nottingham Ice Stadium. And I feel really sorry that people now will never ever get the chance to experience that, because it was something else. It was just wonderful, and I love the place, and like I say, I still miss it very much to this day. So yes, that would be my favourite of all the time I've been watching hockey. Okay, one more question to go, and it concerns one of the TCW team as well. It comes from Kim Groves, came from on email earlier this evening actually. It says, after his brilliant article today, do you feel Paul Baum is the best article writer in British ice hockey? Andy?
I'll keep this one short and simple. Yes.
Do you want to elaborate any more on that as to why?
Well, he's one of the very few that I ever give the time to read. So that helps. Because I simply find his style of writing and how easy it is to read an absolute joy. Admittedly, I think I've spoke to you before we came on air. I do admittedly think that the fact that a lot of his articles resonate very, very well with me, I think that helps. But I don't think that necessarily that's the be all and end all regarding it, because I just think that his particular style of writing and the way that he puts words down on paper really is, a thing of beauty.
Adam?
Yes, I think so, hands down. I think that the way he sort of portrays British ice hockey and his experiences of what he's seen with the Panthers is great, and it. You read an article and before you know it, you've finished it, and you think, wow, because it goes so quick. But that's a good thing to me, because I've read lots of articles from hockey writers over the more than 20 years now of watching ice hockey, and I don't think I've read anyone else's work that sort of conveys the feelings of what you might call, the ordinary fan in the stand, as well as what Paul does. He sort of captures those key moments that some people might miss about being a hockey fan, but he adds life to it. And he takes things off in different tangents, and it just all works. It's like a very complex jigsaw puzzle, but all the pieces fit in the right place and it all works. So long may his writings continue, and we look forward to reading many, many more articles from him over the coming years.
I mean, obviously, we could be accused of being biased, because obviously Paul is one of the team.
No, he's my uncle.
And he's your uncle as well. But, I mean, he's the only hockey writer who's ever genuinely brought tears to my eyes when I read some of his stuff, because it is that good and that profound, the way he writes. And I always look forward to the email when he sends me a message saying, I've got an article for you, because I have the privilege of editing them. I have the privilege of putting them on the website, so I get to see them before anybody else does. So the only person who's read them before they go on the website is Paul and myself, and they're just, sometimes I think, where do you get these from? Because standard is so consistently high. I mean, if you haven't read it yet, go to the Cat's Whiskers website, www.thecatswhiskersonline.co.uk. Click on Paul Baum and click his latest article, which is called Journey's End, and it's about a sort of a summing up of the CHL campaign for the Panthers, but also about last night as well. And it's just a wonderful bit of writing. It's so heartfelt. It conveys what it's like to be a fan. He gets all the emotions over it in his writing, and yeah, he's my best mate. I'm probably going to be biased, but genuinely, if I could write half as good as what he does, I would be a very, very happy man. And and as you say, Adam, long may his articles continue. Right, that is all 13 questions done, and we've been going an hour and 25.
What a marathon!
Yeah, an hour and 25 minutes. It does not seem like that. I feel sorry for the poor listeners, because it probably feels like 3 hours to them. But I think for us, it was. It seemed to go quite quickly. Just before we go, it was 2004. I was right.
Oh, he always wants the last word.
Yeah. And on that note, I think it's time to say thank you very much to Adam Reddish.
Thanks as ever.
And Andy Haywood.
Whatever.
And thank you very much for staying with us and listening. And if you've listened on download, we've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. We will be back on Monday night with our normal review podcast. No STCW next week. We're taking a week off because Panthers are playing in Belfast, and I'm sure you all want to watch the webcast there. So for a couple of weeks, it's time to say thank you very much and good night. This edition of the Cat's Whiskers podcast was brought to you by the Bunkers Hill Hockley.